Hello, welcome back to Hunter Tune. Today we're going to be working on this 2001 Chevy Silverado. It is a regular cab, short box, step-side truck. And we have been working on this thing pretty much for the last couple weeks and have done a lot of stuff to it. And I kind of wanted to maybe catch you guys up to speed on all the things that we have done to this truck. So first things first is this truck got dropped off with a bad turbocharger. So it had, sorry for my mess of a bench right here. It had a bad precision turbo, ball bearing, like $3,000 turbo. You can hear this. One more time. Wow, sounds like $3,000 to me. So we ended up taking that turbo off and we swapped it out with a VS Racing Next Gen 7875 from huntertune.com. It was a fairly straightforward swap. All I had to do other than put the new turbo on was I had to adapt the intercooler piping on the truck. So this truck, when it got dropped off with that precision turbo, it had one of these vibrant aluminum elbows welded onto the turbo. I did not want to weld onto the turbo just in case you want to change stuff. It's kind of a pain in the ass to have to cut this off and reuse it on something else. You might not want this elbow on here. It's a lot easier just to use silicone couplers. They hold up just as good in my opinion, so that's what we did. I just got a silicone 90 off the turbo and I adapted it that way instead of welding onto the turbo. I also don't own a TIG welder, so TIG welding on aluminum, I have to take a lot of the stuff that I need TIG welded up to my friend Ryan, 821 Bravo on YouTube, and he does a lot of my aluminum stuff for me. So anyways, now that we got the turbo out of the way, we did also do a bunch of other stuff to this truck. I may do some videos on what we did with the wiring. Kind of looks like a mess right now, but we did install a Holley Terminator X Max in this truck. Oh yeah, Terminator X Max. And we mounted it in the engine bay, away from heat and stuff, over by the air conditioning stuff, so it's a little cooler over there. You can mount the Terminator X stuff in the engine bay, and on this truck it actually made a lot more sense to mount everything in the engine bay to keep the interior looking flossy. So this truck is extremely clean. It's a very nice truck. It got dropped off, like I said. This truck originally is from like the Carolinas or something, but I don't know if you guys can even tell on camera how clean this truck is. I have the floor mat kind of just chilling right here right now because we had some of the interior ripped out to try and find, hang on, let me grab a light. I had some of the interior starting to get ripped out of the truck to just see if I could find a place to put the Terminator, because ideally putting it in the engine bay is a lot better, or I mean inside the vehicle is a lot better because it keeps it away from heat and stuff like that. And the harness, the Holley Terminator harness, is set up to run everything through the passenger side fender well, or firewall area. And like I said, with this truck it just didn't really make sense to try to cut up everything on the inside. There's no holes in the firewall over here, and I didn't really want to cut up this truck because it's very nice, and I feel like in the engine bay it's still a very good setup where it is. So we're gonna leave it there, and then we had to run the Holley harness, plug it all into the motor, and we adapted the factory computer, so it still has a GM 411 computer in here, and we adapted the ECU to still run all the factory functions. So this truck, like I said, has the Holley Terminator controlling the engine, and it has all the safeties and closed loop features and corrections and all that, all the safety stuff that comes with the Holley, and the ease of use and the ease of tuning and stuff with the Holley, all is there. But it still has everything factory, and I'll show you guys here in a little while when I get done installing the intake back on this truck. But it still has key fob. There is no horn on the truck, but otherwise it would be honking at me. Everything works. The security system is all here still. I mean, we have done a lot of wiring. Me and my buddy Chris, he's been helping me out do some jobs here and there. He came over here and we spent a whole week wiring this truck and getting everything to work. So I'm telling you guys that everything in this truck is awesome. And I have done a few little clips here and there of just wiring this thing and just showing what we did a little bit. But let's just say that we filled up a whole garbage bag full of wiring. You can't really see a lot of it, but we filled up a whole entire, or half of a garbage bag, a big contractor bag, full of extra wiring that no longer is used on the truck. So we spent about a week getting everything wired and operating and running, and then we had another couple days of messing with the cooling fans on this truck, because obviously this truck was kind of already built when it got dropped off. But the story with it was somebody else put it together and didn't really finalize a lot of stuff. So I had to pull the tranny in and out of this thing. I put a converter in it, a new flex plate, a bunch of little things, guys. And it's starting to finally come together to the point where we're gonna start being able to drive this thing, shake it down, and make sure everything is gonna be safe, because this guy is going to be driving this truck to Florida from my shop here in Wisconsin. And he wants to be able to go to like LS Fest, go drag race this thing, and just kind of daily drive it in the Florida heat. So we did all the factory stuff. All the factory air conditioning is working. I'm telling you guys, this is a badass ride. And I'm really thinking we outdid ourselves here with this truck. I was a little nervous taking on this job, but I'm so glad we did now, because we have so much more knowledge. Converting from Holley stuff on a factory GM vehicle and still be able to retain all the factory gauges, which is crazy because not a lot of people are doing this. I did get a little bit of help from Matt at Sloppy Mechanics. I know his truck is kind of similar setup here, a little newer body style drive-by-wire setup, but some of the same principles still apply here. Yeah. Anyways, we're gonna be moving on here, and we're gonna be installing this Trailblazer SS intake manifold onto this truck now. So this truck did have a Holley high ram on it when it got dropped off, but like I said, this guy's trying to use this thing as a daily driver, street slash strip hot rod. And the Holley high ram is kind of a strip only type of intake manifold. It doesn't really make a lot of good bottom end power. And with this thing having the 7875 and it has a small hot side on it, it does not have the 125 big boy hot side. We kind of want something that's just spunky, a lot of good low and mid-range power, and the Holley high ram just wasn't part of the equation to make all that happen. So we're ditching the Holley high ram, and I'm working out a deal with him to where we are going to be using this Trailblazer SS manifold instead, because like I said, the Trailblazer SS, or new body style intake, is the best factory performing intake manifold you can get, plain and simple. So we reused the 92 millimeter throttle body that was on the Holley high ram. It went right onto the Trailblazer SS, and then we got a set of fuel rails off of eBay. These are for Trailblazer SS or new body style. We also got a set of Snake Eater mid-length injectors. So these are Snake Eater 1500s. The Holley high ram had a set of 60 pounders in it, which probably would have worked for low power, but this engine is built, the transmission's built, the rear end's built up. I feel like we can make a good amount of power with this thing and be safe. So I opted to tell him to go with the Snake Eater 1500s, and these are the mid-length ones. These are the other options for the Snake Eater injectors. Then we have the Deca Tall Boys, and then we have the LS3, like Bosch 2200 short LS3 style injectors as well. So anyways, we're going to be putting this intake manifold on here. The only thing that this intake is going to be having differently than a factory one is it has this gap, Glenn's Auto Performance adapter to be able to run a factory throttle cable. That's another thing with this truck that I did, is it had a locker throttle cable, and it was all bunched up, and you can see the end of here, it's kind of chewed up just from when they were putting it in. With that throttle body, they had like 2 big heavy springs in the throttle here, and you could barely open this thing. It was so tight to open. And so when you would go drive this thing previously, the gas pedal was like literally you had to have a 20-pound foot. You had to have a 20-pound lead shoe in order to actually cruise this thing. So it was really a pain in the ass to drive around. and I just hated the way the throttle felt. So I pulled one of the springs out of the throttle body because, you know, a lot of guys say, you know, you need both springs so it holds the boost, you know, like the throttle will shut if, you know, you don't have those big springs in there, but that's a myth. You got to think, you have this return spring, which, watch how fast, I mean, that thing's got plenty of spring back to it. And you also have the throttle cable, which is always constantly pulling on it as well to hold it open. So I don't know what kind of boost these guys are running where they're shutting the throttle blades off, but that is just a big myth in my opinion. I've never had issues like that, ever. So even with stock throttle bodies, you know, running 25 pounds of boost, I've never had issues. So that's what we did. I took one of the springs out of there, and I also got a factory, just went to the local junkyard and I got a factory throttle cable. So this factory throttle cable will fit a lot better than this locker one or low car, because when this low car one was on here, it was like the angle of the throttle cable was like very severely bent. So it was wearing on the inside of the cable. Like literally this truck had like 25 to 50 miles on it, and the cable housing was already wearing out. So it would have only been a matter of time, a few thousand miles I'm sure, and that cable housing would have rubbed all the way through and it would have just been a bad day. So another thing is how these locker cables mount into the firewall, and how this truck is being completely factory underneath and everything. You can't tighten the cable. It's like physically impossible to get the cable to tighten into the firewall properly. So it always had a little bit of play there, and it had a really severe angle here, etc., etc. It was just a bad setup. So like I said, we're ditching that cable and we're going with the tried and true factory GM cable, and we're going to use the Trailblazer manifold. So that should work really good. We're also going to be able to utilize cruise control with this thing. We just have to go get the cruise control module. I'll have to go to the junkyard and pick one of them up, and then run that cable out to here, and the truck will have factory cruise. It will have literally every factory function you can think of, which is crazy. It's a really cool thing to be able to do this. Yeah, I've thought about, me and a buddy have been thinking about doing these Holley conversion harnesses, if people are interested, but they do take a lot of time to do, and they kind of are a lot of work, and we don't have a system set up yet to be able to do them efficiently and have stock. I don't want to be in the same situation I am with injectors right now, where I just can't get these harnesses. I don't know, if a factory or somebody was interested in maybe making them for me, I would be glad to sell them and show the ropes of how to do it. But that's something that may come down the road. We will see. So we're gonna get this intake installed. We already got the new Felpro metal intake gaskets on here. I like these metal gaskets a lot better. They just are a lot more rigid, and they hold up a lot better, especially with a boosted application. So we're gonna run these Felpro metal intake gaskets. I got them both brand new ones installed on here, and we're gonna set the new intake in and get it all bolted down, and then we'll pick up in a little while when we have to do some other things. Also, this truck is running that factory GM 4-bar sensor, which I did have to modify the map sensor mounting hole on this Trailblazer SS manifold. It's a little small, so I had to like Dremel it out a little bit and then get it snug in there, and now it is not moving. It has its little cage that holds everything in. So that thing is awesome. It's got the little adapter to go to the regular style sensor. I think that's it. So we're gonna move on. And one more thing that this truck had is it had the fuel regulator underneath the throttle body on the Holley High Ram. With this new Trailblazer manifold, there's absolutely no way that that's going to fit. So I'm gonna have to do the fuel return setup a little bit differently, and I mounted the regulator over here, kind of on the fuse box cover, just because there's really not much else room in the engine bay. There's kind of a lot of commotion going on here, but once we get it all tidied up, this picture will all come together, and I can't wait to show you guys. So we're gonna get our fuel lines ran and the intake installed, and we'll catch up in a minute. All right, guys, picking up on the truck again here. We did get the Trailblazer manifold installed, or the new body style, whatever you want to call it. We did get that all installed onto the truck here. I do have to modify the intercooler pipe a little bit because The Holley high ram, the throttle body came off at like this type of angle, and the Trailblazer comes off at that type of angle. So I'm gonna have to do something with the intercooler pipe to get it to connect, but that's no big deal. Like, at least we can get it up and running. I did also add in the factory throttle cable here with the Glenn's Auto Performance bracket. Ended up fitting great. Everything is looking good there. I did have to redo the fuel lines to the regulator, so I did have to make and get some fittings for that. We ran one of the rails to one side of the regulator and the other set of rails to the other side of the regulator, so it's kind of just like that. And then off of the bottom comes the return. Hang on, let me grab a flashlight so you guys can see what the hell I'm doing. Thanks to Astro Tools here, we got all the light. So this is kind of how it's set up currently. I did have to extend the vacuum line to the regulator, and then I tucked it off to the side, ran it up there. And we did get the content sensor installed. It is kind of just sitting here for now. So the low dollar motorsports sensors we've been using, this is a 0 to 100 PSI sensor. But one rail, like I said, comes to here, other rail goes to there, and then off of the bottom of the regulator, down here, it's got a push lock hose that goes to one side of the ethanol content sensor, and then the other side of the ethanol content sensor is the return line going back to the gas tank. So I got all that plumbed in. I am using the Sloppy Flex alternator combo harness. You guys can pick one up on sloppymechanics.com. They are really easy to install, and I use the existing power plug on the Holley to give the alternator power and to give the content sensor and all that stuff power. So it's really nice to have that power tap on the Holley. You can, power things if you need to. And yeah, the only thing I really got to do left on the wiring is I have to clean up the input-output harness. As you guys can see here, I did run the fans and stuff off of here, but I still need to put in like the two-step I want to do, and then maybe like some other little things, but that's awesome. I also want to combine these two. So this truck has a fuel pressure gauge on the column, not on the column, on the pillar. It has a fuel pressure gauge, and this is the plug for it. So what I was going to do is I was going to take this and extend it, and then this is the one for the Holley. This is the fuel pressure for the Holley, and I have to extend this as well because the regulator's over here now. So this is just a little too short, it doesn't reach. So what I was going to do is I was going to combine these two into one plug. So the Holley will see fuel pressure, and the gauge inside the truck will see fuel pressure. So if you're not directly looking at the screen on the Holley, you can at least be monitoring it on the pillar. This truck also has a boost gauge on the pillar and a wideband on the pillar. And the wideband has its own sensor. We have an extra O2 bung on the downpipe, so the Holley has one O2 spot, and then the gauge on the pillar has another spot. And then, yeah. So I am about to fire this thing up and see kind of how it's gonna do. I gotta check for fuel leaks and shit like that. Oop. Sorry, I'm gonna pull that off. So I want to just key this thing on and see if it starts, and I think a cool experiment, just for shits and giggles, is we should just not even touch the tune and just see how it starts. This truck is not tuned. I just threw kind of a base file in it, drove like 2 miles, and then I parked it because we had other issues with the throttle cable and just other things, and we were gonna change the intake manifold. So this is the differences now. Without doing any tuning on the Holley, we changed injector size from those 60-pound injectors that were in here to the Snake Eater 1500s. We have the same map sensor, but we have a different intake manifold. And we also, I think that's it. So I want to see if it starts with the giant injector in it now, without even telling it that it has that giant injector. I want to see if the Holley will compensate. I think it'd be a cool experiment, and I gotta check for fuel leaks. So let's take a little jaunt, shall we? Also, this truck has WeatherTech floor mats, and when I was putting the stock Silverado throttle cable in down there, I did notice that the WeatherTech floor mat was not allowing the truck to go full throttle. So I might have to trim the floor mat a little bit in order to give the throttle pedal enough throw to go wide open. That was an issue that I ran into. And they also like hollowed out the frickin' pedal to accept that locker cable, which, yeah. So I might have to do some creative stuff. It works for now, but I have to make sure that cable is 100% secure. So this truck hasn't started in like probably a week. It's been sitting here because I've been busy with other things. But let's see what it does. This is honestly a no cut, no bullshit type of thing. Regular key. So this is the factory key. We have the Holley mounted over here. Sorry, it's dark. I'll flip the key forward. And there's the Holley screen. We mounted it right on the ashtray. We mounted it on the ashtray like pull out thing. So that'll pull out and you can like take it on and off or whatever. Good little spot. Hides the wires real good. I did hear fuel pressure come up. I want to check it one more time. See if we're leaking from anywhere. I don't see any fuel coming out. I think there might be some air in the lines yet, just because kind of sounded like it was a little airy in the lines. But what I'm going to do is I'm just going to take my hand along each of the fittings, and I'm just going to see if my hand is wet by any of the connections that I made, because these are brand new fuel rails too, and we're filling up all the fuel from the rails. No fuel there. Yep, looking good. Holley's over there all lit up like a Christmas tree. Like I said, this has the 1500s in it now. It does not have those 60s. Fuck it, let's try it. It definitely took a second to start, but it's really rich. Like 1030. Let's see if it'll correct. It runs, it started up. But I'm gonna change the injector size. I don't really want to run it rich. I just think it was just a cool little experiment, guys, just to see, like, we changed a lot of stuff, and as you can see, a couple cranks and the Holley took the wheel and fired right up, and it'll tell us what's going on with it. So without further ado, I'm going to just pull the SD card out of the Holley, change the injector size quick, and then we'll come back and try it again. Chilling. Great air fuel. You can see on the Holley down here. Running awesome. I gotta mess with the throttle a little bit yet. The idle air control position is a little high. And I'm gonna tell you guys, look at this. These gauges are frosting up. They're like getting moisture built behind them because this air conditioning is so cold. It is really cool that I can leave this thing sit here in idle all day long with the AC cranked in 90-degree heat, and it doesn't get above 195 degrees. It's awesome. Little setup here. We got the fans wired in a way that fan 1 comes on at 185 degrees. So 185 degrees, the first fan comes on. 195 degrees, the second fan comes on. So right now we only have one fan running. And at 195, the other fan comes on. The other fan also comes on no matter what the temperature is when the AC kicks. So that's what we had a real kind of run around getting the air conditioning stuff figured out with the fans, because we needed the fans to come on at 185 and 195 needed one of the fans to come on to move air across the condenser whenever the AC was on, no matter what the temperature of the truck was. Because if you do not have air through the condenser, when the air conditioning's on, you'll overheat the AC system. So like I said, that's what we had to figure out. It took a while, but we got her dialed. And I've been leaving this thing run for quite a while, and it's just awesome, guys. So like I said, factory key, security stuff still works, and nothing other than flicking the key forward. Our gauges work. We have a gas gauge that works, and it's actually kind of low on gas, but that's good because we're going to put some ethanol on this thing soon. We got oil pressure that works on the factory dash, coolant temp, and battery voltage. Speedo also works, and the tach. So factory tachometer, the factory speedo on the cluster here works great. Right alongside the Holley. Sorry. Let me shut this thing off. So the factory gauge cluster speedometer reads exactly what the Holley reads. That was a whole nother day of getting that to work. I'm just telling you guys, this truck, the turbo's still ripping. This truck is gonna be something special, and it's been a long, stressful month of working on this, and I'm sorry I haven't filmed a lot more with it, but let me tell you guys, it is just going to be one badass ride. I'm going to be a little jealous and a little bit heartbroken when it leaves, but we got some time with it yet, and we got to do some testing with this truck. So there is a couple more things that I have to do to this thing now that we have the intake manifold swapped over. Obviously I have to tune it a little bit more. I still have to wire the input for the content sensor. We have to do the two-step wiring. I want to hook up the line lock because it does have a line lock. I just do not know how or if it's wired. And I do want to make this Turbo Smart dual stage boost controller work. So he can have a low boost setting of 10 pounds and a high boost setting of 20 or 22 pounds at the flick of a switch. That's what I want to have happen on this thing. We also have a list to kind of go through with this truck. Sorry, my bench is a mess. But this is kind of our initial list. It's got a little dirty over the past month or so. But we had to compression test this engine and make sure it was healthy before starting. It was a brand new engine. It had fucking no miles on it when he got the truck. The transmission had no miles and the rear end was broken. He brought it here. I had to fix the transmission because it was whining and the converter spacing was wrong. So we had to get a new flex plate and converter, and I had my transmission guy go through the whole thing. Transmission is A-okay, it's perfect. Now we have the right converter spacing, etc., etc. So motor, we did compression test it. It was a little bit low, but it was even. Just tells me that this motor was built up for some big boost. It definitely seems like it's got some big ring gap in it. Yeah, there is a little bit of small blow-by that comes out of the catch can. That's why he wanted me to compression test it just to make sure, which it seems like it's good. And we are going to put it through its paces before we give it back to him. And if we have to go through the engine, we will. But this is, like I said, it's been a big project that I've been doing and just wanted to go through a lot of this stuff with you guys. So trans was making noise was on this list. So we fixed the tranny. That was initially what took a little while. We had to wait to get the transmission in and out. And then wait for the builder and then wait for the converter to get here and all that kind of stuff. So we did that and then compression tested it, and then we fixed an engine oil leak because the rear main was leaking on this truck when it came in because the converter spacing was wrong and it was pushing against the flex plate and it wore the rear main seal right out of the truck. So we replaced it, we replaced the rear main, and then did all this stuff to the transmission to make sure everything was mint. So we did that. A couple other things we already did is we welded in the C-notches on the frame of this truck. So the frame, or I should say this truck is dropped. It has a leaf spring flip, so it's a leaf under axle conversion, which means the axle is closer up to the frame and you have to put a C-notch in place in the frame so the axle doesn't actually hit the frame. And they were just bolted in, just like a lot of these guys do. They'll just bolt them in, which is totally fine and holds up most of the time, but he wanted just a little peace of mind. So I welded the notches into the frame, and I welded some of the bolts in just so to make sure that plate is not moving whatsoever. And I painted over the welds. We put Schaefer's engine oil in, which was one of his concerns. We have to get a few other things done on it still, but we did install the Holley Terminator. We did the return line with the GM flex fuel sensor we got installed today. I just have to wire that thing yet. We have to inspect and shake down the truck. I mean, we kind of inspected the shit out of this thing already, but we also added a drive shaft safety loop I got for him, just because if we're going to be racing this thing at the track with a tire on it or whatever, the track likes to see a safety loop, and I don't like putting these trucks on the dyno without a safety loop. I don't like putting anything on the dyno without a safety loop. So we got a drive shaft safety loop installed. I don't know what else, guys. We did so much on this truck in the last month or so, but I'm just kind of going through some stuff. We were going to go with a 4-inch downpipe and get a loud valve for the 4-inch downpipe, but we ended up just using the 3-inch downpipe because he wants to make like 600, 650 wheel horsepower, and the 3-inch downpipe will work great, and it'll be a lot easier to route the exhaust with the air conditioning and stuff still intact. 4-inch downpipe definitely would have been a lot trickier and a lot more heat to keep off of things. I think a 3-inch downpipe will be just fine for his power goals, and the like I said, the 4-inch stuff with the air conditioning still being intact, I didn't want to overheat a lot of the stuff in the engine bay. I think 3-inch with heat wrap on it is going to be perfect. This stuff is already foiled up pretty good for the air conditioning stuff, so that's a plus. Yeah. So we have to install a loud valve yet. We have to install a trailer hitch, which he got a brand new Kurt receiver for the truck. We have to install that on the back of the truck yet, and then just run a full exhaust. We're going to run a 3-inch loud valve, which I'm going to run a vacuum line to the loud valve, and then we're going to run a full 3-inch exhaust with a muffler, so it's super quiet, super stealthy for his drive down to Florida. And then when he's got some cocky kid next to him, he can just punch it. That truck lights up and opens up, and ain't nothing gonna touch it. So that's our goal. I'm hoping to put this thing into the 10s or very close to it before he picks it up, and we're gonna put like 1,000 to 2,000 miles on it to shake it down and make sure everything is going to be good. And if any issues arise, we are going to fix them as needed. This, like I said, this is probably the biggest build that I've ever done for somebody else. And it's a little bit stressful for me, but I'm really, really stoked and really happy with how much we've gotten done on this thing and how cool it's going to be when it's done. This is gonna be a one-off, one-of-a-kind truck. Nobody else is gonna have nothing like this. And I can't wait to finish it up and tidy up a lot of this loose ends. Like I said, it's pretty close right now, but it's gonna be something truly special when we're done. We also have an intake that's gonna go onto the turbo, which is gonna be super cool. This is a big old 4-inch with a really large filter. I'm just gonna chuck it on just to show you guys what it looks like. It looks really freaking slick. I'm not really a fan of running air filters on a lot of my stuff, but since this guy's gonna literally drive this thing across the country, it'd be nice to keep it on here for street driving. And it sucks cold air from the fender well. So that little setup right here is freaking sweet. Yeah. Anyways, this video is probably pretty long. Just wanted to introduce the truck to you guys, and I'm gonna keep punching away on it. I got a couple other cars in here right now that I'm gonna work on as well. This car is in for a turbo kit install and tuning. This one is in here for, well, a lot of other little stupid things and tuning. So yeah, anyways guys, thanks for watching the video. Have a great night and a better tomorrow, and we will see you later.